I'm Jackie Pomposelli. I'm the VP of Operations at Nectar. I handle a bunch of different things from internal operations, new partner onboarding for our clients. I do a bit of employee engagement and culture initiatives, and then I help with implementation of new tools and softwares. How my job helps our partners, I think the biggest thing for us is exploring efficiency in the way that we operate internally so that we can make sure that we're delivering a really seamless experience for our partners from onboarding all the way through account management.
Nectar is an agency that prides itself on having great processes, and we're in the process right now, thankfully, of growing a lot. So therefore, we need to also scale our processes and proactively at that.
Probably about 8 weeks of talking to people and identifying, okay, these are the many different ways that different team members at Nectar do this, but what are the patterns? What are the repeatable steps that we can put down on paper to actually formalize that process? So that was step number one. And then the second part of it was evaluating what is a need to have, what are we overcomplicating, and how do we use the tools and resources that we have at Nectar to make this a bit more efficient? So once we got it down on paper, the next step was getting it into a project management tool that was easy to follow because it is a robust process, being able to make that automated and take out some of the admin work for the teams that really needed to focus on the brand's growth once we had the onboarding information we needed. So that's where Monday.com came into play. And we're sort of in that phase now of leaning on that new tool and resource to make the process itself less manual.
I think that things in this vein are always going to take longer than we hope. And the reason is a good one. We're in an interesting phase. We're hiring like crazy. There's a lot more faces now in the company than there were before. And you and I have talked about this before. When you start off as a certain size company with a lot fewer people wearing many hats, the way to scale eventually is to segment and silo the expertises. And unfortunately, the same processes that worked before don't work after. And even though you have experts at the helm of each one of those things, they take so much information for granted that translating that into a meaningful process moving forward, it just takes a long time to even collect that information. You said that you thought it was going to happen quickly, but it ended up expanding into this 8 weeks of collection of information. Mm-hmm. But it's good to be a part of the growth. And I think that this is something that whether you're with an agency or you have just a marketing department, these are things that you have to keep in mind as you scale.
I've said this before to many of my former employees, and I've said it to some of our leadership at Nectar, that operations, regardless, marketing operations or other types of operations, has to be the most collaborative team at the company. And I fundamentally believe that because you are often a small and nimble team, and you're relying on other departments within the company to be the champions of operational efficiency. And so a lot of the work that you should be doing starting out or implementing a new operations team or process is spending that time with the folks that you're working with, explaining what your role is, how you're going to enable them to be successful, the why behind the things that you're doing, and how their roles play into that. So a lot of the first things that you can do is just listening to people, seeing what the roadblocks are that they're experiencing, sussing out patterns in the conversations that you're having, and then narrow in kind of like, what's the first thing that I can address operationally speaking that's going to take my teams out of the weeds so they can really focus on the revenue driving initiatives that they need to be focused on to take their partners' brands to the next level or the company to the next level. So that's something that I think a lot of operations professionals early on in their career take it for granted, is that relationship building to help kind of formalize your place in the organization. The second thing that people get wrong is they think that they put a process in place and that's it. I'm going to wipe my hands clean. It's in place. It's going to make us more efficient. And we'll see the fruits of those labors down the line once people get up and running on the process. But the reality of the situation, especially when you're scaling, is that your job is never done. There's always version 2, version 3, version 4 of a process. And if you are continuously thinking about how to improve things, getting feedback from your colleagues about, hey, this is working really well, we missed the mark on this area, and not taking those things personally, but thinking about how you can adjust and adapt your process to meet the needs of the team better, you'll be a lot more successful in the implementation of whatever operational project or process or workflow that you're trying to implement within the company. I think I poke fun at myself and operations professionals in general that we're not super creative people because we're just focused on following the process and finding efficiency. But at the end of the day, if you fundamentally think about what the purpose of a process or operations is, it's to find efficiency in the way that you're doing things. And when those things don't exist, people don't even realize how bogged down they are by the administrative things that they're doing, or the things that they're doing that could be replaced by automation or tools, for example. And so even though, and there is creativity in the way that you design process, right? Because you're always iterating and thinking about what's the best outcome, the best case scenario, the area that I can automate. But you're actually enabling your teams to be more creative by putting process in place, because you're freeing up time for them where they don't have to focus on checking off those as administrative boxes, and they can actually explore creativity in the way that they're doing things. So, for an example, at Nectar, we have Monday.com now, and we're just starting our journey on building out process in Monday. As people get more familiar with it, and I'm helping people figure out how automation and all of the different features that Monday has can benefit us, they're actually going to find that they have more time in their day to work on their creative projects, to think about their advertising strategy, and even just extra benefits that we can provide our partners, because they're no longer having to be overly focused on some of the things that they're doing now that could essentially be done by a tool like Monday.
I often think of a good process as alleviating the amount of things that you actually need to know, because you just have the things that you need in order to do the thing that you're actually paid to do. You're specialist. I don't want our photographers or our graphic designers to have to worry about those meta details. What are the specifications for that? We want them to know that they get their information from here. It is incorporated into their work, and then this is where their work goes afterwards. An immense amount of time before defining those things is not necessarily, it's not wasted because they need to do it. But once you predefine those things, then a massive amount of time opens up for exactly what you get better work product, because your graphic designer can just sit there and go, now I just need to design. I just need to design the best work possible for this brand or that brand.
It's not something that you pay for, right? It's tied to employee culture. So communication to me is the most important tool that you have in your toolbox for ensuring successful implementation of process or ensuring the success of any type of operation that you're focused on. Because communication is kind of the key that unlocks those silos that you're talking about. So at an agency where there's very clear this team does this team does this, and this team does this, that's all well and good. And it shows clear roles and responsibilities. But if one team's not talking to the other and a scope of work covers the scope of several different teams, then what are we actually doing? How do we know that our overarching output as Nectar is correct? And you cannot do that without communication and having productive communication, right? We have Slack, we have email, we have all the same tools that every other company that's remote has. But what we have to continue to enhance are those touch points, those regular touch points throughout our day, throughout the different scopes that we're executing, where the teams are coming together and making sure that they're collaborating so that the output we're giving to our partners is what they asked for and that we're delivering on that ask from the beginning. People inherently are resistant to change. And if I'm following any of what I've just talked about, I'm telling people that we constantly need to be changing, right? Like, you just learn a process, and then maybe after a couple of months, we're actually taking the time to evaluate whether or not it's been successful. And we can talk about KPIs in a little bit. They have to relearn a certain part of the process again because we've changed it and enhanced it to be more reflective of our business. So yeah, people's a big element of it. Expectations, I know you joke that we talk about this all the time, is another massive element of it, because if they don't know what the expectation is, they don't know what their role or responsibility is in an overarching process that affects many, many teams at a company, then they cannot be successful in carrying out your process because they have no idea what their role is in it. At Nectar, we don't have necessarily historical operational data where I can say, generally speaking, it's taken us, let's call it 6 weeks of time to onboard new partners. We want to get to 2 weeks in the future. How do we get there? So part of a big point for KPI or measurement for operations is setting benchmarks. And we've been doing that in a lot of different areas. Our employee engagement surveys from 2023, this is benchmark data for us so that we can see where we're rating in certain areas of the company. We can gather patterns and employee feedback, and then we can address operational changes that are going to have an impact on that feedback, hopefully in a positive way. So that's a big part of it is benchmarking. Same with Monday.com, our onboarding process, just being able to get that in Monday, we're benchmarking that. I can say, hopefully pretty intelligently after going through a few of these onboarding of new partners in Monday, can say, generally speaking, if we look from when we started to when we ended, it's taking approximately 4 or so weeks. So what's our goal for 2024, right? We want to decrease by 50%, et cetera. So there has to be a pretty strong dedication to creating those avenues where you can benchmark data so that you can actually see where your efficiencies are coming from in the future. I am super excited to see where that comes out for our baseline, and then we can really have a targeted approach of saying, yes, this process was successful, or no, maybe onboarding got worse. Why was that? Can we narrow in on what was the roadblock that was potentially created by the process, or where were people dropping the ball, so to speak, or those types of things, and address it more heavily there. But I have KPIs in mind, just shortening the length of time that we have partners and a new partner onboarding. I'd like to see us improving in some of our areas of employee engagement and culture. How long is it taking us to get new hires or potential new hires for Nectar through a recruiting pipeline? And once I have that baseline, I think I can make more realistic goals for us on getting better in certain areas through next year. I fundamentally don't think that we should get away from providing that kind of boutique level service to our partners. So if we want to continue to do that, the question lies in not making our interactions with them super robotic through a really templatized or over processed way of working with them. But there are things that we can tackle that help to allow our employees to continue to engage with their partners in that way. So there are things that we should be templatizing on a quarterly basis. So they know from Nectar, I can expect this sort of overview, this look back at my brand, this analysis at this time. And also on the sort of other side of things, our employees know that that is what is expected from them from a pure client relations standpoint. So yes, there's a nice balance of it. Now, the one thing that I want us to continue to venture away from is taking away our employees' agency when it comes to the relationships that they build with their partners. I think part of what makes us really special is that our success managers treat their partners' brands as their own. You know, we almost talk about our partners' brands as if, you know, they're part of what Nectar is doing. And that's a good thing because they feel ownership over it. So there's a really fine balance between creating those sort of templatized or standardized ways of doing things, and then also removing all of the distraction that our employees don't need to be focused on so that they can do things like pick up the phone and have a productive conversation with their partners, even though that wasn't necessarily on the calendar, if that makes sense.
Time to interject a brag for Nectar. In fitting with the boutique service, we also, at this point, have a pretty hard rule about not allowing more than X number of partners per success manager, per ad manager. Now, there's some little tweaks in there depending on ad spend and whatnot. But for the most part, if we see more clients coming down the pipeline and we know that, no, we can't add more to this guy's plate, we're going to hire more people and good people at that.
A lot of agencies, and I think a lot of different types of businesses that are in kind of a service model get a little bit panicky, right? Because when things are going great, things are going great. When your partners or your clients are under stress, oftentimes you feel like you're on the chopping block. And I think what is tough about that is you end up over-indexing your employees because you're scared to make an investment in other folks if the kind of the economic environment is not optimal for people in service style models like we have. So that is a big one that they struggle with. Agency employees are super burnt out. They are working crazy hours, and they oftentimes don't feel super valued by their company. So that is one thing that I really am focused on, and I can say very confidently that the rest of our leadership team is focused on, because we hire ahead of that boom to make sure that we can continue to serve our partners in the best possible way that we can, because that's what Nectar was fundamentally built on. So that's one thing, is remembering that your employees are not machines, and agencies across the board need to be better about treating their people as people. Having worked in several agencies myself, I can speak to that personally. Another thing that agencies really struggle with, again, it's the silos, right? You know that you're supposed to be doing account management, you're supposed to be doing advertising, you're supposed to be doing creative, and there's a lack of sense of cross-functional partnership or a sense of feeling like a team, right? And I think that's one thing that Nectar has narrowed in on, and we're trying really, really hard to enhance the relationships between our teams and making them feel more like a brand team than just agency partners that have to interact at certain times to make sure we stay within scope. And then, the last thing that I think agencies struggle with that we actually do really well is making sure that the partners that we work with are reflective of Nectar's culture and the culture that we want to create with our teams. And we have really, really great partners because we have high expectations of them. They have high expectations of us, and that enhances the partnerships that we have and make them more productive. I don't really think that most of our partners just treat us like their agency that they beat up on, and I think that's a testament to the brands that we work with. Taking a look at how we're spending our time just in general, and evaluating whether or not those things are must-haves or they're nice-to-haves. So something as easy as let's eliminate or condense a couple of meetings to give people time back so that they're more constructive and we're giving people more time to focus on what they need to focus on to be successful for their partners and their accounts. Another one, and this sounds stupid, but so many companies take this type of stuff for granted. Putting policies and procedures in place in terms of how you operate internally so that you're ensuring people know exactly what their marching orders are and what the expectations are of them. This is simple stuff, like having meeting agendas. I harp on that all the time. Something as simple, if you don't have a tool like monday.com, you have a RACI put in place so people know exactly who's responsible for what the communication chain looks like, those types of things. And then recording the things that you're doing, not just video recording, but actually putting pen down on paper. You talked a little bit about this, but this is a really morbid way of describing things, and I absolutely hate when people do it, but I'm going to do it myself. If one of our team members was to be hit by a bus, like, do we actually know what they're working on, how they're doing the things that they're doing, and are there SOPs written out so that other people can take over those types of things and know exactly kind of what that workflow looks like? SOPs are a pain and everyone hates them, but they have their place in operations and they have their place in an organization. And if you're not keeping record of the things that you're doing, you're going to have a really hard time finding efficiencies in the way that you work.
It's one of those things. It's nobody needs virus protection until they get a virus.
Right.
Right. It's the bus rule is a well-known thing, and everybody knows that that's what they should be doing. But like actually taking the time to invest in doing that, never convenient to do, because you're taking time outside of what seems like at the time unnecessary to the business, because the business is working, the business is running. Why do I need to do this? But then you said it's not just somebody getting hit by a bus. Somebody gets sick for a week. Somebody goes on vacation. You think everything's going to be okay, but they just forgot to say something.
Right.
Somebody retires. All kinds of things. And then boom. I wish I had taken the time to do this earlier on, because now instead you run up into a giant mess, and instead of something taking the half hour or whatever that it was going to take, no big deal, somebody else can do it because I've got a process in place. Now all of a sudden it's a week-long scramble to retrace all the steps, collect all the pieces, and then put a poorer version of the output together so that you can be late on something and possibly damage a relationship with a partner or business or whatever. So I can't speak about that enough. It gets me fired up. I'm passionate about it.
I know. Same.
Once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to answer these questions for me. I think that operations is something that gets sorely overlooked, even though it's kind of the thing that ties it all together, that allows us a smooth, it's redundant, but operation, a way to get the product to our customers, to get the results to our customers. And I applaud the work that you've been doing in streamlining our processes and giving us the necessary tools to scale to the next level of growth. And if Nectar is going to continue to deliver that boutique service at scale to a much larger set of customers, we need to get our processes down. So thank you once again. If you are interested in learning more about how Nectar can help your brand grow on Amazon, go to thinknectar.com, check out our resources. We got case studies showing how we did it, tons of different problems solved, blogs, videos, our YouTube channel, giving away all of the secret sauce for how we do it. And if you need help doing it, reach out, give us a call, drop a line, fill out that contact form. We'll be here, I promise.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.